Hey everyone, Jay Whitner here with Space Headlines. Each week we do a recap of what's going on in the space universe. Today we're going to be talking about the fourth week of July 2018. Our first item has to do with 3D printing of rocket engines. Several companies are doing this. What's unique about this Additive Rocket Corp is that they're using something called generative design. So they have a rough design of an engine, and then they have the computer iterate and iterate and iterate, trying to figure out among thousands of different designs what's the very best design, which they then 3D print. They're getting very good results. This interesting company has 7 employees and has already gotten outside investment for what they're doing. A Chinese space official has voiced some doubts about the United States plan for the Lunar Orbital Platform Gateway. The guy's name, if I pronounce this right, is He Zhaopu. He's the deputy director of lunar exploration for China. And he basically is saying that LOBG is not cost effective and that the real science returns are on the lunar surface. And that's where China is going to go. And they're not sure really why we want to go to the surface of the moon. SpaceX had another nice triumph. They launched their second Falcon 9 Block 5 rocket in 4 days. This particular launch, they launched it from Vandenberg out in California, and it was 10 Iridium satellites were in this launch. The satellites went into the right deployment orbit. The first stage landed nicely on the drone ship, and the new improved Mr. Stevens ship that catches the fairings when they're coming down so they don't impact the water, get salt water all over them, was unable to catch the fairings despite the bigger net that was recently installed because of bad weather on this particular day. So it was impressive that SpaceX was able to land on the drone ship with the first stage. Very interesting news about Mars. The Europeans have some spacecraft orbiting Mars, and they're using radar to study Mars. And the conclusion of their studies is there's a big lake underneath the south pole of Mars. By big, I mean miles wide. This is a subsurface lake that they estimate is 12 miles wide, and this water is about 1.5 miles beneath the surface. While there's not a current technical means to drill that deep beneath Mars' surface to access this water, it does speak to Mars's history and the possibility of life somewhere on Mars, perhaps deep beneath the surface. The TESS telescope, this is the follow-on, you might say, to the Kepler spacecraft that found so many exoplanets. This is the new and improved Kepler telescope, sort of. This thing was launched in April, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. Since April, it's been in a testing phase, which is now complete, and now it's in operations and is actually taking measurements. So TESS is expected over its lifetime to find about 1,600 exoplanets, and it's looking in different areas than Kepler did. Kepler had a very small piece of the sky that it was searching. TESS is searching a much broader piece of sky that's close to home, closer to Earth. The Senate has put forth a Space Frontier Act that's coming from basically 3 senators were the sponsors of the thing: Bill Nelson, Ted Cruz, and Ed Markey. And the idea here is that the Senate proposes that we give the Department of Transportation a lot of authority over space operations that are not currently being done. So new space operations would be overseen by Department of Transportation. And the bill also says that we should extend the International Space Station to 2030, which is 5 years further than the current White House proposal. And all this differs from what the House is saying. The House wants to give oversight to new space activities to the Department of Commerce. So we're coming up on a little bit of a tug of war here between the Senate and the House to see who will end up being in charge, given oversight of new space activities moving forward. 3D printing is all the rage. We already had one 3D printing story just today. But this story has to do with a contest that NASA has sponsored. And this is designing 3D printed habitats for Mars. So this is a 4-part contest, and only the first part has now been completed. And they picked 5 different winners for phase 1. And the winning team for phase 1, at least, is this device that's depicted here in the image. And you see these little legs toward the bottom. This thing lowers to the surface and 3D prints something, and then uses the legs to walk a little bit of a distance, and then lower itself again and 3D print another thing. So in doing so, it creates different modules using 3D printing out of the Mars surface materials. So this is a great leveraging, because most of the mass and material comes from Mars, with only specialty items being brought in from Earth, like an airlock kind of a thing. That's it for our stories in the 4th week of July 2018. Check back with us in a week or so, and we'll be covering the 1st week of August. See you then.